Vinyl records have an ever-increasing following among audiophiles, collectors, and DJs. Some say they sound better than digital CDs and MP3s. To cater to this market, some record companies are releasing more music on vinyl, a manufacturing process that's interesting and fun to watch. The first step is to cut a master record. This flat disc is made of aluminum, and it will be the core of the master. The surface has a gritty texture early on, but they sand it down and polish it smooth. They place the aluminum discs on a conveyor belt, and they ride towards the device that will coat them with a veneer of lacquer. The disc enters the curtain coater. Nitrocellulose lacquer, a similar substance to nail polish, oozes out of a long, thin opening, forming a veil or curtain. As the disc passes through the curtain, it's slattered with the lacquer. Rollers with scrapers catch the runoff. The excess lacquer they collect is reused. The lacquer starts to dry immediately. The solvents evaporate, and the veneer hardens into a nail polish-like finish. But like any manicure job, there are often flaws. At this inspection station, workers scrutinize each lacquer disc for pits, bumps, or dirt. Even a minor imperfection won't be tolerated, so the rejection rate is high, about 50%. They recycle the rejects. They rim the good masters with plastic edging. It will stop the discs from rubbing together during stacking and damaging the finish. Next, a worker holds the disc under a hydraulic puncher that cuts a hole in the center. Then, handling it carefully so he doesn't disturb the finish, he places it on a spindle. A robotic arm slides a plastic ring down the spindle, depositing it around the center hole of the disc. Like the plastic edging, the ring will also space the discs apart. Now the master discs are ready to take a trip to the studio. The lacquer disc is about to be cut. The engineer places it on the recording machine, called a lathe. He peels the protective ribbing away from the rim. He places a vacuum line at the center, which suctions to the underside of the disc and holds it in place. The engineer now moves the cutter and a microscope above the disc. He lowers the cutter onto the outer edge of the disc and it does a test cut. He positions a microscope just above the test groove and then peers into it to get a good look at the cut. He makes adjustments to the cut and then he's ready to record. The lathe cuts the lead-in groove and the music begins. The sapphire-tipped cutter etches the sound into the surface of the disc. From start to finish, the recording will be one continuous groove in the record. A computer monitors the cutting and adjusts the spacing between the grooves where needed. A little vacuum draws up scrap as the cutter carves the groove. Some believe this sound is warmer and has more depth than digital recordings. But making music fit on an analog disc is sometimes challenging. To reproduce bass, the cutter has to make big, wide grooves that take up a lot of space. And although the grooves can touch, they can't cut across one another. At the end of the recording, the cutter lifts and the master disc is ready for inspection. If it's acceptable, the engineer places a sliding platform on it and scribes a unique serial number into the lacquer. Soon, this master disc will be used to make more records. The master disc has just been cut, but the lacquer surface is far too delicate to play. It's been produced solely to act as a mold. It will literally be pressed into service to make tougher versions of the recorded grooves. And this will enable the manufacturers to make many copies from just one. In the next step, they wash the lacquer disc with soap and water. They spray it with tin chloride and liquid silver. The tin chloride is a sensitizer that helps the silver stick to the lacquer. They wash away little bits of silver that don't stick. In seconds, one side of the lacquer has become a stunning silver disc with the grooves intact. But next, they'll add a duller metal to the silvered side in order to really stiffen the disc. They fasten it to a spindle on the underside of a tank lid. The disc spins, and they rinse it one more time. The water in the tank below is green because these nickel nuggets are dissolving into it. They lower the lid and the spinning disc is immersed in the solution. An electric charge fuses the nickel to the silver. And the nickel settles neatly into the grooves. Now they remove it from the tank and pry the metal layer away from the original lacquer disc. This metal layer is a stamper that will be used to press vinyl records, and the lacquer disc, which has served as its mold, is discarded. Now they look for the exact center of the stamper. A worker places it under the microscope, which is part of an optical centering punch. As the stamper disc spins, he aligns the grooves with a guide in the viewfinder. When he finds the center, he punches a hole there. Next, they clamp the stamper disc into a trimming machine. The disc turns and a cutting wheel trims the edge, cutting the stamper disc to a diameter of 12.5 inches. Now the stampers are ready to make their mark. But first, the labels must be prepared. A punch bores into the center of a stack of them, making holes. Then they place the labels on a mini press. It rises to another cutter which rounds them out. They pour black polyvinyl chloride pellets into a hopper. The pellets fall into an extruder, which turns them into hot rubbery patties called biscuits. Hoists above and below push labels to each side of the biscuit. Suction cups hold them there while a carriage moves the biscuit forward, then drops the biscuit and labels in the press. Two stampers mounted in the press apply 100 tons of pressure. The stampers are a searing 380 degrees Fahrenheit. They melt and mold the biscuit into a record. A quick cooling cycle hardens it and bonds the labels to the vinyl. A carriage then transports it to a trimming table. The table spins the record against a knife as it cuts away the ragged edges. Then the table takes the trimmed record to the finished stack, and the process begins again. This is really a well-choreographed musical production. As one record is lifted out of the press, the next one goes in. The pressing and trimming of a vinyl record takes just 28 seconds. But it's sure to get hours of play by enthusiasts who refuse to buy into the digital revolution and still believe that vinyl is a cut above.